Welcome to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. I'm Collin Whitchurch, joined today by Sean Zerillo and Kyle Murray to break down today's MLB playoff slate. We got a pair of game twos today, just 2-game slate. NLDS today, Dodgers Phillies, 6:08 p.m. on TBS, True TV, HBO Max, and then Cubs Brewers game 2, 9:08 p.m. It's kind of funny that I know we're in I'm not used to the Dodgers not being at home to start these series, and it's like the Dodgers game is the early game, getting 8 o'clock local time start in Milwaukee. It kind of threw me off the other night when that was the case, but Dodgers.
Yeah, 9 o'clock East Coast start in Milwaukee is just bizarre.
Yeah. Dodgers obviously took game 1. That was the more intriguing game 1 of these two series. Brewers just ran away and hid from the Cubs early on in that game. We'll get into best bets from both of these games, but Sean, I want to kick it to you first. You know, we didn't have shows over the weekend. We got these game 1 samples out of the way. Just wanted to get your take on both these series and where you're at in terms of series prices, expectations for the futures markets, just for the overall series of these two NL matchups.
Yeah, I could highlight the AL ones too as well. Jays up 2-0. I make them about minus 600. You can find minus 525 on Toronto. If you follow me in the Action Network app, I give out Jays plus 130 before the series. We also bet them in game 2, and we're betting them again in game 3. If you're finding one of these lines that have value at the moment, it is Jays minus 525. Obviously, I'm not recommending you play that. Just play their game 3 money line instead. The Tigers-Mariners series, Kyle and I were discussing this right before we went on because I found it very interesting. After the Brian Wu left off the ALDS roster was announced, the Mariners also discussed the fact that that Josh Naylor, his wife, is about to give birth to their first child, and he is going to go on the paternity list if and when she has that baby during the ALDS. So I actually lean to the over in game 3 between the Mariners and Tigers. I have not bet it yet because I'm not sure if Josh Naylor is going to be in the lineup. You know, even an hour before the game, we don't know if Josh Naylor is going to be in the lineup. The Mariners may announce him in their lineup, and then the moment his wife goes into labor, apparently he's going to be on a plane back to Arizona. So before that series, after the Wu announcement, after the Josh Naylor news, and after we found out that Logan Gilbert was pushed to game 3, not even game 2, the Mariners dropped from minus 210 to minus 170. The Tigers dropped from plus 170 to plus 140 on the series line, which is about a 5% adjustment in terms of implied win probability. I think that's right, considering Wu would not be starting a game and it would instead be Bryce Miller. And Logan Gilbert also wouldn't be starting game 1. You know, it would be George Kirby instead. So the Mariners' chances kind of got kneecapped by circumstances here and maybe a little bit of self-sabotage, saving Gilbert till game 3. It's not like Kirby pitched bad in game 1 and he wasn't the reason they lost. But yeah, I just found it fascinating that the Mariners essentially, you know, lost 5% in implied win probability with nothing happening, you know, other than their roster announcement and availability of certain guys. So I make Seattle about 53%, headed to Detroit for game 3. The market is around minus 120 for Seattle, plus 110 for Detroit. So I'm right at the midpoint of that market. In terms of the NL matchups for today, Cubs-Brewers, I really wanted to bet the Cubs to win the series, to come back and win the series. I make it plus 230, though, and their best available number is about plus 225. So we'll wait to see after game 3 whether there's value, or game 2 after whether there's value on the Cubs headed back to Chicago. And then the Dodgers and Phillies, I maintain, even though there's no series value on the Dodgers at this point, I maintain that there is futures value on the Dodgers. The publicly available projections out there right now, everybody has them at minus money to win the NL pennant, minus 109 to as high as minus 148. I believe that is from the bat and from Derek. They have them, again, minus 109 to minus 148, the projected range for the Dodgers. You can get them as high as plus 125 to win the NL pennant at current. And for the World Series, their projections are between plus 212 and plus 130. You can get them as high as plus 260 at present. So Dodgers plus 125 pennant, plus 260 World Series, I think are still both good value bets right now. The caveat being, I've been waiting for them to lose one of the first 2 games of the series against the Phillies, and we'll get into this. I will favor them every game, the rest of the NL playoffs. Favor them every game of the remainder of the series against the Phillies, every game against either the Brewers or the Cubs. But if they drop today's game, you will get their peak price, in my opinion, for the final time. So I'm a Phillies fan for today. I also have Dodgers to win that series 3-2. I'm a Phillies fan for today because I want the best available numbers on Dodgers pennant and World Series tomorrow, and we'll bet that and then hope to ride them out the rest of the way. So that's my futures take as of right now, value on the Dodgers, but I'm going to root for the Phillies today and hope we get better numbers.
Speaking of Phillies Dodgers, let's jump right into today's game. Kyle, get your thoughts as well. Got a couple of props on this. We'll build SGPs for both of today's games. Dodgers Phillies game 2, again 6:08 p.m. tonight in Philadelphia. We've got Blake Snell against Jesus Luzardo. Dodgers minus 132 at DraftKings. Phillies at plus 109 as the underdogs here at home. Total of 7.5. Minus 115 to the over, minus 105 to the under. Kyle, I'll kick it to you first because you've got a trio of props here, including one really fun and unique one that I'm curious about. And also you're targeting Luzardo today as well.
Yeah, so I guess we'll start off with Luzardo, looking at his walks prop off the top, taking the under 1.5 walks. I do tend to have at least some worry when it comes to guys, pitching in these postseason environments, and especially in the walks prop, where how they can kind of settle into games and whatnot. But when you're looking at Luzardo and what he's kind of done in terms of his walks prop, he's gone under this number in 3 of his last 10. So he's only gone over this number in 3 of his last 10. Sorry. When you look at the matchup, you have a Dodgers team who can certainly, do plenty of damage throughout the course of their lineup. Pretty much 1 through 8 have pretty significant pop in the projected lineup, but Luzardo's not a guy who does a ton of walking. 7.5% walk rate. When you look at this projected Dodgers lineup, only a 6.8 projected walk rate for this 9 hitters. So the projection that we have in our model here at Roto Grinders has a pretty significant under on the Luzardo play at 1.5 walks. So I'm liking that one. And then another one kind of leaning into Luzardo that I thought was kind of fun. I did kind of want a little bit better odds, but at plus 120, I guess I can't complain. But it's exactly 1 strikeout in the first inning for the Phillies. Just looking at the matchups and what we see, we're going to see Ohtani, Betts, and Hernandez in the projected top 3. That'd be the same lineup as last game. So nothing too surprising there. When you look at those guys, Ohtani, 28% strikeout rate against lefties this year. Betts at 10%, Teoscar at 16.5%. So obviously the likely candidate to strike out would be Ohtani. And that's obviously a difficult proposition no matter what, because Ohtani is one of the best hitters in the world. But nonetheless, at plus 120, Luzardo's a guy who can easily go out there and strike out anybody. So you're hoping that he can only get limited to 1 here. But that 28.5% strikeout rate, I think if we get Ohtani down, hopefully we can back on, count on Betts and Hernandez to show those low strikeout rates come to fruition there. And then if worst case scenario, if we don't get Ohtani out with K's, maybe Luzardo can backdoor one of these low strikeout guys, Betts or Hernandez. So plus 120 for that one. And then last but not least, I like the under 4 runs in the first 5 for this game. Pretty much a market play here because a lot of these other books do have this at 3.5 at plus money. So, the under 4 stands out to me. Obviously, Luzardo on the bump for the Phillies. Already talked good enough about him. But for Blake Snell on the other end, 2 lefties here who can certainly miss bats. Obviously, these guys do have the ability to give up some power at times, but just their ability to miss bats, I think, will go a long way. So I'm liking the under in the first 5.
Sean, we'll go to you. Curious, you're on the other end slightly of Kyle here. You are going to talk to us a little bit about how you like the over in this game. I'm curious how that correlates with Kyle's play. Is there any concern for you with Kyle's play on the first 5 under, or is your interest in the over here more bullpen based, and maybe we can find a way to hit both of these bets today?
I'd be concerned for a couple of reasons. So the reasons why I'm on the over here. Number one, Adrian Johnson is about a 3% boost to my run scoring environment. So he's going to add about a third of a run to any game. He's the best and most profitable over umpire in the Action Labs database. Career 55% to the over. As I said, he's the most profitable over umpire since 2005 in there. And his games go over by an average margin of 0.8 of a run per game. 6.7% ROI since 2005. So Johnson is one of the more hitter-friendly umpires out there. Wind blowing out tonight doesn't matter as much, as Kyle said, with 2 strikeout-heavy pitchers. The ball does not matter if the wind's blowing out at 30 miles an hour if they're going to be striking dudes out, right? Same with Max Fried, like keeping the ball on the ground in certain starts, or heavy ground ball pitchers. the weather, the wind matters a little bit less depending on the dynamics of the pitcher. So yes, these guys, the wind doesn't matter as much, but it is blowing out tonight, 7 miles an hour. Maybe the bullpens, that'll matter a little bit more. One of the more significant differences, and another way I add about almost a half a run per game onto this total, the defensive outfield that the Phillies platoon against righties compared to lefties goes from one of the worst defensive outfields in baseball to one of the best defensive outfields in baseball. They trade offense for defense, righty versus lefty. Tonight, they're projected to start Weston Wilson, Otto Kemp, and Nick Castellanos. Those two cost them about 2 runs, 0.2 of a run per game compared to your average defense. When they play righties and they start Marsh, Bader, and Kepler, they save about 1/4 of a run per game compared to an average offense. So it's literally like almost a half a run swing in terms of defensive quality between the outfield they play versus righties compared to lefties. I'm assuming they're going to stick with their normal platoon splits tonight. Now, obviously, once Luzardo gets out of the game, maybe those outfielders come out, get platooned for, and the better defensive outfield comes in. So in the first half of the game, when that bad defensive outfield is in there, that's where I think you could see some mistakes against Luzardo, potentially in the outfield, could cost them a run. Both teams hit better against lefties than righties down the stretch. The Phillies actually matched their output lefty versus righty. They were 121 WRC plus against both. The Dodgers 118 versus lefties, 111 versus righties in September. Prefer the Dodgers offense in general. They just chase so much less. 3rd in chase rate on the year. Phillies were 28th. Second half strikeout rate, Dodgers 9th. I believe Dodgers were the 9th lowest in the second half. Phillies were, don't have it here, I think they were 19th. And then isolated power, Dodgers 2nd, Phillies 9th. So a little bit less chase, or a lot less chase, a little bit more power, and a much better defensive club on the field tonight. So I do make this game about -120, but I make the total 8.25. So over 7.5 up to 8 at even money. It was 7.5 even yesterday, has started to juice up just a little bit, and we're good with it up to 8 at even money or better. No props for me on this game. I had a difficult time figuring out potential pitcher usage because in these NL series in particular, we did have the extra off day between games 2 and 3, and we have another off day, obviously, after game 2. Sorry, extra off day between games 1 and games 2, then another one, obviously, tomorrow between games 2 and games 3. These teams travel. That could, in theory, allow both bullpens to get used more aggressively. But Dave Roberts has no interest in using his bullpen until he gets the rookie Sasaki in the late innings, or unless he's going to be able to piggyback Tyler Glasnow, which he did kind of in game 1. So I actually do see the Dodgers bullpen potentially causing some issues tonight and giving up some late runs against this Phillies team. They don't have Glasnow to turn to. Sheehan gave up runs the one time they went to him in the Red Series. There's no confidence in the arms behind Snell tonight. So I think Snell does continue to get left in for 6 innings if he can, if the pitch count's fine. And then after that, you play Russian roulette with the Dodgers bullpen. So yeah, over 7.5, as I said, up to 8 at even money. But I think, Kyle being on the first 5 under, me being on the full game over, I think there's a chance that both of those could hit with how the Dodgers bullpen gets managed. It's just the Phillies defensive outfield early is going to be pretty bad if balls get hit out there.
Yeah, this is the one series, along with Scooble on the Tigers, like this is the one series where you almost see games playing out more like a regular season game with the starters being leaned on a little bit because both these teams have such good starting pitchers where, in some of these other series, it's like the first sign of trouble, these starters are going to get the hook. The less trustworthy pitchers are going to get left out. But it's crazy with Snell with his postseason history. We talked about this in the Red Series when we were on the over on his outs total. He's a workhorse now. Suddenly, all of a sudden, it's crazy. And yeah, with the extra off day, I mean, all these bullpens none of them worked that hard in game 1. Glasnow threw 34 pitches, and being a career starter might be a little difficult to get him back in there on just 1 day rest. But like Vesia threw 3 pitches, Sasaki
and also, the Phillies don't have Alvarado in the playoffs. So
yes.
That's one fewer good lefty in your bullpen, which means Luzardo probably gets left out there to face Freeman, a third time, or Ohtani a third time. I think the same kind of goes for the Phillies pitching staff as well. They apparently have Ranger Suarez listed in their bullpen. I would assume that Suarez was going to start game 3 ahead of Aaron Nola. Maybe I'm wrong, but this roster resource says that Suarez and Tanner Banks and Tim Meza and Matt Strahm are all lefties in their bullpen. Is that a surprise that either or both of you that Suarez would be in the bullpen as opposed to starting Game 3?
Yeah, I would be fairly surprised by that as well. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned over with Aaron Nola getting the potential call in Game 3 over him. That would be pretty surprising to me. But
Yeah.
again, maybe it is kind of one of those things where they needed that more confidence in a lefty in the bullpen with Alvarado off the roster. I would guess that's probably the only way it wouldn't be surprising to me.
I think we've seen this with the Phillies in the past. Ranger Suarez was kind of a bullpen weapon for them before he became like an established starting pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
You do wonder if they, if they lose today, it changes the calculus entirely.
Sure.
But maybe the hope is that they use Suarez as a fireman type situation today. It's his bullpen throw day, and they save him for Game 4, and he can still start Game 4 after pitching a little bit in relief today because he's done stuff like that in the past. Obviously, the risk that they take is that they use Suarez today, lose, and now you're facing a do-or-die game with Aaron Nola on the mound instead of Ranger Suarez. It also, I don't know how deferential they'd be to, the veteran in Nola. He was a little bit better down the stretch in the regular season, but like Suarez is pretty clearly the better starting pitching option right now. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they manage that today with.
Can we get Clayton Kershaw and Aaron Nola on the mound together in
Oh my God.
Game 3? Or an elimination game would be even better, right?
Yeah. In terms of the same game parlay here, that's gonna be my role on today's show. No straight bets for me. I'm gonna build some parlays based on your guys' bets. Luzardo walks under. We go with the full game over. Sean's bet, that's plus 232 at DraftKings. We can still go a little anti-correlated here if you want to get a little bit riskier. So I'll give out two. The over 7.5, Luzardo under walks easy, plus 232 DraftKings. If you want to add Kyle's first 5 under to that, the 1K in first inning thing isn't applicable for an SGP, obviously. But if you want to add the first 5 under to this, go a little non-correlated, get a little riskier. We can actually go at DraftKings to under 4.5 for the first 5. Add that leg, plus 700 at DraftKings. So either of those options there for you, and that's how we will bet Dodgers Phillies today, because I do think there's a really good chance with the bullpen uncertainty and with these trustworthy starting pitchers that maybe if we get runs in this game, they come late against these bullpens. No glass.
Live over 6.5 or 7 as well. If total's going to open at 7.5, no runs first inning, you might drop the 7 at that point. So definitely keep an eye on the live total as well.
Before we move on, don't forget to sign up for Action Pro for real-time pick alerts from experts like Sean Zerillo, Kyle Murray, and our entire Action Network team. Plus, you can access our pro projections powered by Sean Kerner and our predictive analytics team. All you have to do is go to actionnetwork.com/pro, and you can get $20 off the annual price with the promo code PAYOFF20. So don't miss out on the best bets at the best prices. Visit actionnetwork.com/pro. Use promo code PAYOFF20 to get $20 off a year of Action Pro. All right, Game 2 in Milwaukee tonight. Cubs, Brewers, Shota Imanaga against Aaron Ashby. The Brewers just ambushed the Cubs in Game 1. We talked about this going into the playoffs. We talked about it a lot in the regular season about the way the Brewers win games. And I was just laughing so hard at how those floodgates opened. The Brewers give their opponents 27 outs. If their opponents give the Brewers 28 outs, the Brewers take advantage like no team ever has before, it seems like. And just the strange coincidence of the best defensive second baseman in baseball, at least in the conversation, if not definitely, and Nico Horner committing that error that led to the floodgates opening in Milwaukee in Game 1. Now we have Imanaga against Ashby. The Brewers are minus 132 here to take a 2-0 series lead. Cubs plus 108, as I mentioned, about 9 o'clock Eastern time. First pitch in Milwaukee. Total sitting at 8, a static 8 right now, minus 106 to the over, minus 115 to the under. Kyle, I'm going to kick it to you first. You have another pitching prop here focused on Imanaga, who we did see in that first series of the postseason, and I'm curious how you're looking at him tonight.
Yeah, just one pick for me in this game. The Game 1 of this series was an interesting one. I was on the under. I think I might have been tailing Sean on the under in this one, and the Brewers put up 9 runs in the first 2 innings and did nothing the rest of the game. I just turned the game off and I looked and I was like, oh, they just didn't have, a 6-run first inning would have been sitting pretty good there. But yeah, I'm looking at Imanaga here. I'm taking his under 3.5 strikeouts. Obviously, in that wild card appearance, we saw him follow an opener, only threw 67 pitches, 4 innings. Did have 3 strikeouts in that one, but this is another spot where we're just not projecting a ton of efficiency. We have him for just 3.1 strikeouts so far in our RotoGrinders model. When you look at the matchup, just a handful of guys who are just stingy hitters against left-handed pitching, with 5 hitters projecting for a 14% K rate or lower against lefties. And that's up to 6 hitters with a 20% K rate or lower against lefties so far this season against southpaws. So tough matchup here in terms of just not seeing a ton of high strikeout rate guys, but also I think there is a couple of different reasons to be a little bit worried about a potential long leash here for Imanaga. So when you're projecting them for like 75, 80 pitches, you need that high efficiency, and if that's not going to come from matchup, you need to bank on that from him in its own arsenal. And when you look at his strikeout rate this year, it's dropped pretty significantly compared to last year. About 20.8% strikeout rate this year, compared to that 25.1% strikeout rate last year. So he hasn't really shown the massive strikeout upside on his own. The matchup's not going to be implying an increase in strikeout rate, as well as the potential volume issue. All these things lead to me being on the under for Imanaga.
The Cubs did a really good job relative to what they faced on Saturday at saving their key bullpen arms behind Matthew Boyd after he left.
Yeah.
Aaron Savali really saved their ass, throwing 4 1/3. Soroka, probably the only guy they threw out of the bullpen who they sometimes rely on in key spots, but it was Soroka, Savali, Ben Brown. They saved, Palencia, Kittredge, Keller, Pomeranz, Thielbar, etc. Those guys are all very, very fresh going into this game, which makes me not at all surprised if Imanaga gets a short hook here, if he gets in trouble, because despite giving up a boatload of runs in game 1, they still have a very fresh bullpen. Sean, you're in lockstep with Kyle on these strikeouts. You've got another Imanaga prop as well, and you're on this game total as well.
Yeah, I think both managers are going to give each other permission to turn this into a bullpen game. Again, the extra day off before this game. So the Cubs use their long relievers, but relative to the wild card round, their key high leverage relievers should all be good now. Palencia can go back out there for 2 innings if they need him to. They don't trust Shota. I mean, they used an opener ahead of him in the wild card round. So the hook is going to come relatively quickly, I think, if he gets in trouble. Similar to Matt Boyd in game 1 of the wild card round, where it's like, okay, he got through 3 innings. Oh, he gave up a hit in the 4th. Oh, he's out. Like Matt Boyd was just suddenly out of game 1 of that wild card round after giving up a walk or a hit, in the 4th inning. And I think Shota is going to get a similar leash here, where it's like, he gets through the lineup once, okay, and then we're going to start playing it almost batter by batter, because in addition to all the high leverage guys you mentioned, they also have Colin Ray available tonight if they need to go once or twice through the order with him too. So I think the Cubs have more than enough arms to go bullpen game today. Again, another off day before you would go back and reset at home with Jameson Taillon. Your high leverage guys can pitch, an inning each day and then be relatively well rested again for Wednesday. So Cubs bullpen game, Shota under 12.5 outs. I like it to minus 125. And then with Kyle, Shota under 3.5 strikeouts up to minus 150. Not only for all the reasons Kyle mentioned, but also the Brewers' #1 lowest strikeout rate in September against left-handed pitching. Part of the reason I bet the Matt Boyd unders in game 1. I bet Boyd under strikeouts, Boyd under outs in game 1. That was, as free money as it gets, right? He was out in the 1st inning. He got shelled, but I also don't think he was ever staying in that game particularly long. Anyway, even if he had pitched okay. He was on 3 days rest. The Cubs had all of their long relievers ready to go, as we saw. I never thought Boyd was staying in that game that long. Thankfully, I didn't bet the under in that game, the under on the game total. I stared at it for a long time. I'll admit I thought about it, but I didn't end up pulling the trigger, and obviously was pleased to have avoided it in the 1st inning. I do, though, like the under for game 2. As I said, I'm expecting pretty heavy bullpen usage on both sides. The Brewers going to start Aaron Ashby. I think Ashby actually gets left in longer than the betting market anticipates. So his outs prop is 5.5, juiced to minus 160. His walks prop is 0.5, juiced over. His hits prop is 1.5, juiced over. That gets you to 9 batters, right? Well, if Aaron Ashby is facing 9 batters, he's facing 12. because the Brewers only have 2 other left-handed relievers in their bullpen, aside from Jose Quintana, who I'm expecting will start game 3 or game 4 for them. But they only have Gasser, who's not a reliever, and Koenig, who they used, I believe, in game 1. I'm actually not sure about that. But regardless, aside from Ashby, they only have one other actual loogie that they trust. So Ashby, to me, who has this year pitched 12 outs, has thrown 45 pitches in a start or in an outing. I think Ashby stays in long enough to face PCA at the bottom of the lineup, and then Michael Busch and Kyle Tucker again at the top of the lineup, which to me is 12 batters instead of 10 or 9. So Ashby over 5.5 outs is -160. I like that up to -200. I also like his -1.5 or over 1.5 strikeouts up to -200. He has about a 30%, 29% K rate. If he faces the lineup once through the order, it's about 2.4 strikeouts. If he gets the 12 batters, you're talking closer to 3. So Ashby over 5.5 outs, over 1.5 Ks, probably prefer the outs given the expected usage. But then the under in this game, I make this total about 7.15. No umpire impact really, but the defense on both teams, in this series in general, and when you're combining that with a new pitcher every inning, I think does help suppress the run scoring. These are 2 of the best defensive teams in my model, probably number 2 and number 3. Toronto is still number 1. On the year, the Cubs were 3rd in DRS, 2nd in outs above average, Brewers 11th and 5th, respectively. The trade-off, I'm assuming Jackson Chourio will not be in there for the Brewers tonight. It is actually not a downgrade for me in terms of their win probability, surprisingly, and they played quite well without Chourio this year, but it is a defensive upgrade. Chourio was -4 DRS in center this year. For his career, I believe Isaac Collins is +7. Or it's not Collins. It's whoever's replacing him, Perkins. You're going from a below-average center fielder defensively by defensive run saved to an above-average one. And we've talked about, too, a lot, and I know you mentioned, Herner screwing up, the first inning in the first game for the Cubs. He is the best rated defensive second baseman in baseball. The Brewers have forced more negative OAA from their opponents than any other team. They forced -30 outs above average. I think the next closest team was -18. So the Brewers do put the ball in play and force you into mistakes. But as I said in our playoff preview, if there's a team that I'm picking to shut that shit down, it's the Cubs. It's the Cubs or the Jays. There were only 2 infields this year that had an above average defender at every position, Toronto and Chicago. Matt Shaw finished as the 3rd best defensive third baseman, which is a surprise because he seemed like a butcher early on. 3rd in DRS at third base for Matt Shaw this year. Dansby still one of the top shortstops. Herner was the top second baseman, and Michael Busch was +2 at first base. So the Cubs theoretically should have the defense to shut down what the Brewers excel at offensively. And after that big blow up in game 1, I'm hoping that the market has just, gotten scared off of the fact that the Brewers seem to score runs in bunches. This team went below 500 in September. They really struggled to score, honestly, after that huge win streak that they had in August. This is not, one of the top offenses in baseball. This is a average to below average offense with below average pop. They need you to make mistakes in order to score runs. And the Cubs, yes, they did in game 1. I don't think it's something that is necessarily repeatable. So under 8 down to 7.5 -105, my best bet for today. But I also do like those Shota under and Ashby over props in this matchup. And just to reiterate, we'll be looking at a Cubs series price. If they go down 0-2 in this series, or even if they tied at 1-1, I'll be looking at their series price after game 2 and hoping to find some value because I still think there's a way back for them here.
Yeah, Brewers bullpen usage is kind of one of the great unknowns, I think, of a game like this because, after your Uribe and McGill, they can kind of do anything. And also,
I assume Quinn Priester is going to bulk, and he's who I project to pitch, 3-4 innings of this game. But yeah, to your point, they can do whatever they want.
Yeah, because, again, you assume Quintana is going to pitch game 3. That hasn't been announced, but they have Mizrowski back there. They have Chad Patrick back there. They've got a lot of long guys back there, and it's just how they're going to mix and match. They didn't put Tobias Myers on the roster. They didn't put DL Hall on the roster. Ashby, it's funny. He's starting this game, and he's quote-unquote opening because he pitched in relief in game 1, but he could certainly go deep here. You mentioned Koenig. They did use him, and then just Mears were the only other relievers they used in that game 1. So they have a lot of options there. and how they mix and match. Because if the series goes 4 games, that we're talking Thursday, Mizrowski, Patrick, whoever could throw in relief today and start those
And these
games.
teams have another off day between 3 and 4. Is that correct?
They do not. They play Wednesday and Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of uncertainty there, but a lot of props from Sean, which is great. Got the Imanaga under, which you guys are aligned on. So that's obviously going to be a part of our SGP here. Showed Imanaga under 3.5 strikeouts. We'll go with the full game under there. And then for the Ashby leg, you mentioned over 5.5 outs. You mentioned over 1.5 strikeouts. If we wanted to add one of those to our SGP, get a little bit of juice there, Sean, which one would you recommend?
I'd go outs.
Outs. So under 8, Shota under strikeouts, Ashby over 5.5 outs. So he just needs to get through 2 innings. We're looking at plus 430 there. Definitely shop around. Some sports books don't let you add outs as an SGP. Bet365 has that. We can get that at plus 430 as our Cubs Brewers SGP. Kyle, let me ask you, of our SGPs that we went to between Dodgers Phillies, where we go the over, Luzardo walks under, and the first 5 under, or Cubs Brewers under, Shota K's under, Ashby outs over. Which SGP do you like more today?
I think I would prefer the Cubs and Brewers one because there's really not many people I'd rather be against or semi-against on a play than Sean. So even I was even thinking about it when he was talking about the defensive outfielding. In game 1, I was on the under first 5, 3.5 with Ohtani on the bump. He gave up 3 runs early and ended up still getting there, but Bader made like an awesome diving play in center field to really seal the deal in like the 4th or 5th inning. So you can just see those things kind of play out. So I still. I think the added correlation of having the under in the first 5 and the over in the total game is interesting, but I don't think we're getting actually enough of a boost on the DraftKings for that reverse correlation. So I think I would lean the SGP in the Cubs Brewers game.
All right. Under 8, Shota Imanaga under 3.5 strikeouts. Aaron Ashby over 5.5 outs. Again, plus 430 at Bet.
I like that one. I like that one too.
Do shop around for the best possible prices you can.
And
get.
K's is fine as well.
Yeah.
Ashby K's and outs is basically the same, bet for me, more or less. It's all usage related, and he can get he can get the K's in 1 inning. He can't get the outs in 1 inning, so maybe K's is the better option.
Yeah, and let's be honest. If people want to get crazy, they could add both, but we won't go that far. We're giving out a plus 430 SGP already. Everything else you do. Bet at your own risk, bet responsibly. These SGPs, of course, we're talking couch change here. We have our firm locked in bets, and then the SGPs just have a little bit of fun today. But that'll do it for today's episode of Payoff Pitch. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to tail some of these bets from today's episode, whether it be the straight bets or the SGPs, look for the links in the episode description of this podcast. Also, don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app. And please leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to the podcast. Also, be sure to check out our new AI Quick Slip bot on X. Just tag Playbook at Playbook. Tell it to grab whatever bet you're looking for. It'll create a quick slip link for you in a matter of seconds. We will be back tomorrow with more best bets. Another episode of Payoff Pitch. Tomorrow we're looking at a couple of, we could have our first LCS qualifier tomorrow with Blue Jays Yankees. And then Mariners Tigers locked 1-1, 2 ALDS games on Tuesday. For Sean Zerillo and Kyle Murray, I'm Collin Whitchurch. Thanks for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's MLB betting podcast. Good luck with all your bets.